السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. أما بعد. Welcome everyone to our, I think, 14th or 14th session, I think, on the Maraqi wa Sa'adat of Imam Abu al-Ikhlas al-Shurumbulali rahimahullah. We reached Bab al-Anjasi wa Taharati anha, the section on the types of filth and the means or methods of purification from them. We will begin with reading the text, and then inshallah we will translate it, make any comments as we go along. The honorable Sheikh, the knowledgeable Imam al-Shurumbulali, nafa'ana Allahu bih, may Allah benefit us from his book. He says, النجاسة إما مغلظة وإما مخففة. فالمغلظة كدم المسفوح والبول والغائط والخمر والمني، والمخففة كبول ما يؤكل لحمه وبول فرس وخرء طير لا يؤكل. ويطهر محل النجاسة بزوال عينها إن كانت مرئية إلا ما يشق، وغير مرئية بالغسل 3 مرات والعصر كل مرة، وبإنقطاع تقاطر ما لا ينعصر 3. The Sheikh rahimahullah, he says filth are of 2 types: hard filth, مغلظة, or مخففة, or light filth. فالمغلظة كالدم المسفوح, the first type of sort of hard or heavy filth is flowing blood or urine or feces, البول, urine, والغائط, feces, والخمر, wine, والمني, sperm. Then he says والمخففة, and light filth, كبول ما يؤكل لحمه, the urine of any animal that is legally permissible to eat. وبول فرس, the urine of horses. وخرء طير لا يؤكل, or the sort of droppings of birds that are impermissible to eat. Then he says ويطهر محل النجاسة بزوال عينها إن كانت مرئية. So any visible or discernible filth, a filth that is smell, touch, smell, taste, or something like that, you know, the sort of features of a filth, they are, if it's visible, then the place of filth is purified by the removal of the filth itself, unless إلا ما يشق, unless it's really difficult to remove the filth. So a place with filth that is discernible, then the way to purify it is by washing, by the filth itself being removed, it being removed itself. And then in كانت مرئية, if a place has let's read that again. If the place has discernible filth on it, then it is purified, it becomes purified بزوال عينها, by the removal of the filth itself, the item or body of filth. If it's removed, then purification has taken place. Unless إلا ما يشق, unless it's difficult to remove that filth. If it's غير مرئية, if it's not visible or indiscernible filth, if it's kind of filth that is indiscernible, then purification takes place بالغسل 3 مرات والعصر كل مرة. Then the thing in which the filth is washed 3 times, and if it's something that is like a cloth or something that is squeezable, then one has to squeeze it 3 times to ensure that all the droplets are out. Each you squeeze if it's a squeezable item, and it must be done 3 times. So 3 washings, each washing with a squeeze if it's an item with filth that can be squeezed. Then وبإنقطاع تقاطر ما لا ينعصر 3. If it's an item that cannot be, if it's an area of filth on something that cannot be squeezed, then by washing it 3 times, the item is purified until it stops dripping, basically. So if the item is not something that's squeezable like a pot or pan, then rather than squeezing it each time, you wash it once and wait till it dries. It doesn't have to be completely dry, as long as it's not dripping with water. So 3 times any utensils or items are washed, and each time you will dry that item at each wash, because you can't squeeze it because it's not a squeezable item like a pot or a pan. Pots and pans, you can't squeeze water out of them, so you have to wait till they dry. And drying is when, not that it becomes completely dry, free of any droplets, but as long as there's no droplets falling off the item itself. وعفي قدر درهم من and then the Sheikh continues وعفي قدر درهم من المغلظة وعفي ما دون ربع الثوب من المخففة وعفي رشاش بول كرؤوس الإبر ورطوبة ظهرت في ثوب طاهر جاف بلفه في نجس لا يسير بعصر ووضع قدم مبتل ولم يظهر به أثر النجاسة وكذا وضع ثوب رطب على أرض نجس ونوم في ثوب نجس أو على تراب نجس فابتل بالعرق. The amount that's excused, the amount of filth, a heavy filth that's excused, is that of a dirham. It's about that size. The inner part of the palm, it's about this size. And this is really ufiya lis-salah. It's really an excusable amount for the salah, for the prayer. So a coin size of filth is excusable if it's heavy filth. وعفي ما دون ربع ثوب من المخففة. If it's not heavy filth, then the amount of light filth that is excused is as long as the extent is less than 1/4 of one's entire garment, thawb, or in some opinions, the entire body area of the body that needs to be washed. Other people say the entire body itself. So it could be 1/4 of one's thawb, one's clothes, or 1/4 of one's entire body, or 1/4 of one area of limb that needs to be cleaned, or something like that. But here the Shaykh rahimahullah, he says ربع الثوب من المخففة. So he's put the opinion where that the amount of light filth that is excused has to be less than 1/4 of one's entire garment. 1/4 of one's entire garment. Then he says وعفي رشاش بول كرؤوس الإبر. The spray, the sort of light spray of urine is excused if the size of each rashash, if the size of each sort of dot of urine is the size of a needle, head of a needle. So if urine spray fell on one's clothes, then the excusable amount is that each sort of spray is the size of the head of a needle. Then he says, وَرُطُوبَةٌ ظَهَرَتْ فِي ثَوْبٍ طَاهِرٍ جَافٍ بِلَفِّهِ فِي نَجِسٍ لَا يَسِيلُ بِعَصْرِهِ. He says, moisture that appears ظهرت on a piece of cloth or clothes, pure dry clothes, بِلَفِّهِ فِي نَجِسٍ لَا يَسِيلُ بِعَصْرِهِ. If moisture appears on a dry, pure, clean garment after being wrapped in an impure, damp garment, then that would not be impure. The clean garment that is wrapped in a filthy garment, impure garment, will not be itself considered impure, as long as you know, la yasilu bi asrihi, as long as that filth cannot come out if one were to squeeze it. So if I had one cloth wrapped in an unclean cloth, as long as no filth comes out if I were to squeeze that unclean cloth, then if my clean cloth was wrapped around it, it wouldn't be impure. No impurity would have transferred to my clean cloth. And this is the mas'ala. The Shaykh, rahimahullah, is going through our filth. In what cases filth transferring from one item to another, and what are the basic rulings of that? This is what he's referring to now. In the case of a pure dry cloth wrapped around an impure cloth, that impurity won't transfer to the pure cloth unless the impure cloth was squeezable, and that squeezability would result in filth coming out. وَوَضْعُ قَدَمٍ مُبْتَلٍ وَلَمْ يَظْهَرْ بِهِ أَثَرُ النَّجَاسَةِ. The other instance is a wet, clean foot that steps on an impure ground without any trace of filth appearing on the foot. So no color, smell, or taste appears on the foot of that filth. So if a clean foot steps on the ground, so one does wudu or something like that, then one steps on the ground, or one washes their feet, one steps on the ground, as long as no traces of filth come onto the foot, then no transfer of filth has taken place. وَكَذَا وَدْعُ ثَوْبٍ رَطْبٍ عَلَى أَرْضٍ نَجِسَةٍ. A damp or moist, pure garment, وَضْعُ ثَوْبٍ رَطْبٍ عَلَى أَرْضٍ نَجِسَةٍ. A damp, pure garment that is placed on an impure surface or ground without any traces appearing on the garment, that wouldn't make the garment impure. أي لم يظهر به أثر النجاسة. There's no filth that has appeared on the pure cloth that's put on the ground. وَنَوْمٌ فِي ثَوْبٍ نَجِسٍ. The body of one who sleeps in a dry, impure garment. أو على تراب نجس فابتل بالعرق. Or أو على تراب نجس, or if one sleeps on تراب نجس, if one sleeps on turab, on a floor that is najis, and that body فابتل بالعرق, if that body becomes wet due to sweat, then unless some filth has transferred visibly, then that wouldn't be deemed impure. So if someone slept في ثوب نجس أو على تراب نجس فابتل بالعرق, then that wouldn't be, unless the traces of filth appear, then that wouldn't be a case of impurity. So sleeping on an impure garment, and if your body becomes wet by sweat, then unless filth has actually appeared on your body, then one shouldn't consider that state of being a transference of filth. And then he says, rahimahullah, وتطهر النجاسة بالماء ولو مستعملا وبكل ماء مزيل كماء الورد والخل واستحالة مطهرة كانقلاب العذرة رمادا أو ملحا ويطهر نحو الخف بالدلك عن النجس ذي جرم وإلا يغسل ونحن سيف بالمسح. And then he says والأرض باليبس والذهاب الأثر للصلاة لا للتيمم ويطهر الثوب والبدن بفرك مني جاف. Then he says رحمه الله وتطهر نجاسة بالماء. Any filth, any najasa is cleaned with water, walau musta'malan, even if that water is used water. So used water that has dropped from the body or has touched the body because it was used for ghusl or wudu or something like that. So these are water, any water that has touched the body because of religious reasons like wudu or ghusl. That water, that used water, can be used to remove filth. It can be used to remove filth. But it's not purifying for religious purposes. It's not purifying for ritual acts. So you can use it to remove filth, but you cannot use it for ritual acts. Like, you cannot use that water for wudu to do ghusl. And then it says, وكل ماء مزيل كماء الورد والخل. Any liquid that is used to remove filth, like rose water or vinegar water or whatever takes the label of ma'i muzil, any liquid that is purifying, that is used to remove filth by its nature. And then he says, وَالْإِسْتِحَالَةُ مُطَهِّرَةٌ كَإِنْقِلَابِ الْعَذِرَةِ رَمَادًا أَوْ مِلْحًا. Then he says, anything that goes under istihala, or complete transformation of its nature, can be a means of purification. For example, if feces turning into salt or ashes, فإنقلاب العذرة رمادا أو ملحا. If something changes its complete substantial nature, so feces, if it turns into dust or salt or whatever it is that feces can turn into, if it's a totally different substance, then that can be used for cleaning. It can be a means of removing najasa, purification. You get liquids that can change its nature, its chemical nature. So grape juice can become wine, or wine can turn into vinegar again. So grape juice is pure, wine is impure, but then wine changing its nature to vinegar is something pure. So you can have some substances that have a different ruling because they change their nature. That's istihala. Then he says, وَنَحْوُ الْخُفِّ بِالدَّلْكِ عَنِ النَّجَسٍ ذِي جِرْمٍ وَإِلَّا يُغْسَلْ. Then he says, any footgear, particularly leather footgear, or any kind of footgear like sandals or whatever it might be, they can be purified by scraping or rubbing off the affected area, the area that has filth, on the ground with any dirt, if the filth on it is a solid body. So if it's like a lump of I don't know, let's say animal poo on it or something, right, it's dried up, then purifying would take place by just sort of scrubbing it off or rubbing it off, on the ground. If the filth is solid, then just rubbing it on the ground, like your foot, if it's under your shoe, you rub it on the ground, that would be sufficient to fall under removing the filth. وَإِلَّا يُغْسَلْ. But the Shaykh says if it's not solid, then you have to wash it off. i.e., if it's liquid, if the feces is in a liquid form, or if it's moist and wet, then you have to wash it. You have to wash it from the area that's been affected. وَنَحْوُ سَيْفِ بِالْمَسْحِ. Similarly, shiny surfaces like that of a sword can be cleaned by just wiping it. It can be purified by just wiping its surface. So mirrors, swords, metals, anything like that with a shiny surface. Then he says, وَالْأَرْضُ بِالْيَبْسِ ذَهَابِ الْأَثَرِ لِلصَّلَاةِ لَا لِلتَّيَمُّمِ. And the earth, in order for earth to be purified, then the way to purify the earth is to let it naturally dry. As long as وَذَهَابِ الْأَثَرِ, as long as the traces of filth have been removed, the smell, things like that. So if these athar, traces of najasa, of filth, are removed from the ground by drying, then salah on that ground is permissible, but you cannot use it for tayammum. You cannot use it for dry ablution. But that dirt on the ground that's been dried up cannot be used for tayammum. Because the dirt, it's not pure in the sense that can be used for purifying yourself. Then it says, وَيَطْهُرُ الثَّوْبُ وَالْبَدَنُ بِفَرْكِ مَنِيٍّ جَافٍ. If sort of sexual fluid has dried up on one's clothes or one's body, then the way purification can take place, the way sufficient purification can take place, is by sort of scraping off or removing the filth by scratching it off or something like that. And so if it becomes flaky and breaks apart, and then comes off the clothing or one's body, then that will be considered purification taking place. And then he says, rahimahullah, وَيَطْهُرُ جِلْدُ الْمَيْتَةِ بِالدِّبَاغَةِ الْحَقِيقِيَّةِ كَالْقَرَضِ وَقُشُورِ الرُّمَّانِ وَبِالْحُكْمِيَّةِ كالتتريب والتشميس وإلقاء في الهواء وتجوز الصلاة عليه والوضوء منه إلا جلد الخنزير والآدمي وبالذكاة الشرعية يطهر جلد غير مأكول دون لحمه. Then he says, وكل شيء لا يسري فيه دم لا ينجس بالموت كالشعر والريش والمجزوز والقرن والحافر والعظم ما لم يكن به ودك ونافجة المسك طاهرة كالمسك ويجوز أكله كالزباد. So he says, ويطهر جلد الميتة بالدباغة الحقيقية. Anything that any hides of animals that have been purified is purified by the actual process of tanning, بالدباغة الحقيقية, like when we mean dibagha haqiqiyya, with any agents that are required to purify or tan the hide. So if you use supplementary agents, chemical agents, or whatever there might be, tanning agents, then so if any jild, any hide or skin of any dead animal is purified by the process of tanning, such as using pods from trees, the qarad, وقشور الرمان, or pomegranate seeds, or by natural tanning, or بالحكمية التتريب والتشميس وإلقاء في الهواء, whether you're using the process through tatrib, like dirt or earth, or using the sun, tashmis, or the wind, وإلقاء في الهواء, whatever process is involved in tanning and whatever natural tanning process is used, فتجوز الصلاة عليه والوضوء منه. Then salah, one may pray. It will be permissible for tajuzu salatu alayhi. It will be permissible for praying on it, or to perform wudu from the water that's inside it, like from a water sack. If you make a water sack from the hide, then any water that's within the hide, made out of that leather, it'll be permissible to use that water. But there's an exception. إلا جلد الخنزير والآدمي. Even though, so pig, using any sort of pig hide skin is not permissible. Even if it's been purified through tanning, it would not be permissible. والآدمي, even that of human beings, even though the skin of a human being is tahir, it's pure. Even though the skin of a human being is pure, we do not use the skin of a human being. It is forbidden to use it or to derive any benefit from it. And this is out of the reverence to the human body, the hurma, the sacredness of the human body. So once an animal hide has been tanned, any water within inside it, or any the hide itself will be pure, like for example to pray on, if it's used as a surface cover, or anything made out of it that keeps water, like a pouch or a bottle, or whatever it might be, container, then the water within it will be pure. The only exception is the hide of pigs and human hide. وبالذكاة الشرعية ويطهر جلد غير مأكول دون لحمه. So hides of animals whose meat is not allowed to be eaten may also be purified by slaughtering according to the Sharia method, بالذكاة الشرعية, as opposed to the meat which remains impure. وكل شيء لا يسري فيه الدم لا ينجس بالموت. Anything that does not have flowing blood in it is not rendered impure when it dies. لا ينجس بالموت كالشعر, like hair. الريش, feathers. المجزوز, الريش المجزوز, cut feathers. والقرن, horns. الحافر, sort of claws. والعظم, bones. ما لم يكن به ودك, as long as there's no fat on the bones. Then he says ونافجة المسك طاهرة كالمسك. The deer's pouch of musk, like the musk itself, is pure and may be eaten. The same ruling ويجوز أكله كالزباد, and the same ruling applies for الزباد, which is I don't know, it's a kind of I think it's a kind of civet, kind of cat-like creature. Kind of cat-like creature. So the Sheikh mentioned some rulings of filth there, and then he talks about, he goes on to talk about wells, which we will, inshallah, pick up next week. We will do the text on wells, then we will do saliva, and then istinja, and then bi-idhnillahi ta'ala, we will start the bab of salah. So I'll stop there to see if there's any questions that anyone has, or any comments on it. If there's no questions or comments, we will leave it there. And next week, we will begin the section on bi'r, the well, and then we will do as'ar arba'a, the 4 categories of saliva, and then we will do al-istinja, and then we will commence kitab al-salah, insha'Allah. Until then, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.